All right, Steelers Nation, you know what time it is. Arthur Moats, and I'm joined by Mark Bergin. I mean, this is a guy that's becoming a really familiar face, and it's only going to continue. We know he's the WRAL Channel 5 producer down in Raleigh, North Carolina. But this guy right here, man, he's obviously been cooking it with the content. And like I said, man, we're going to continue to see a lot more of him over on this channel as well. But Mark, a lot has transpired since the last time we've talked. We officially know where Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing quarterback this year. Signing with the black and the gold, 1 year, $19.5 million contract, 10 mil guaranteed with a lot of incentives. We got to get it. Let's talk about it, man. Give me your thoughts, your initial reaction to Aaron Rodgers, the four-time MVP, Super Bowl champ, officially signing with the black and the gold.
One thing I don't understand why no one's talking about. Who's the biggest winner in this transaction? Can I show some love for Corliss Waitman? Corliss Waitman getting the bag for the 8 ball, and this isn't a sick ayahuasca joke. I'm talking about the number 8 jersey that Aaron Rodgers is going to get to wear as part of the black and gold. And I'm sure he'll pay a decent chunk of change over to get that jersey number. We knew he couldn't wear number 12, but man, no one's talking about that. But oh man,
shout out to Corliss Waitman. He's gonna make his year's salary, man, off of one transaction right there, man.
Work smarter, not harder. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh man, but it raises the ceiling. I think the Steelers are a better team with Aaron Rodgers than they would be with Mason Rudolph. I'm fine with the contract because that's about what a starter makes at a minimum if a quarterback's not on the rookie deal. I'm just glad it's finally done and over with because we've been talking about it for so long. You can get into minicamp and he can start to gel with some of the receivers. I have a lot of questions now that Rodgers is on the team of what this means moving forward. But I want to get into that. I want to get into the winners and losers of this news that Aaron Rodgers is finally a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, man, let's get into it. Let's go 10 toes in, Arthur.
All right. So, man, let's first break it down, man. What were some of the things that you did like in terms of this move, man, him officially being with the black and the gold? Let's specifically talk that, and then we'll get to what we don't like about it as well. And then we can figure out, man, who really won and who really lost in this transaction as well, man.
Let's go glass half full here. I think the best case scenario for the Steelers would be what Brett Favre did in the 2009 season when he went from the Jets to the Vikings. Favre was 40 years old. Aaron Rodgers is 41. He'll turn 42 during the season. The best case scenario for Pittsburgh would be he rekindles the flame. He shows that he's got something left to prove. And that Vikings team went to the NFC Championship game. I think that's the ceiling of best case scenario of what this move would mean for the Steelers. But that's the glass half full perspective. And
You've already said it, so we're all going to just go ahead and sign, seal, deliver it. We're going at least to the NFC Championship, man. Y'all heard it right here first, all right? Stop playing.
I love it. I think another receiver is going to come in, though, because one of the questions I have is who's wide receiver 2? We know Rodgers loves his veteran players, so I think there's still a move of, even before this signing with Rodgers, who your wide receiver 2 is. But now that Rodgers is coming in, I think a move will be made. Now, it might not happen till we get closer to the season because other teams make cuts and whatnot. Maybe the Steelers see what they have with Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson. But I think another receiver is going to be on this team before week 1. I think you have a better idea who wide receiver 2 is. I don't think that player's on the roster at this point in time.
Now, to follow up with that, though, we obviously remember heading into the Aaron Rodgers official signing, we were getting trade rumors, right, about a Jonnu Smith, even potentially some interest in a Kyle Pitts type. Do you potentially see them going that direction also versus just the true traditional wide receiver 2 that we would have a line opposite of DK Metcalf?
Well, maybe you get a tight end and then you say, well, Pat Freiermuth is a tight end, but is really more of a wide receiver, kind of a hybrid, more hybrid style. There's still some decent free agent players out there. So I just think it's who's available and for what price. And then if it's a trade, what you would need to give up if a trade is a possibility. But again, I also point to where there are cuts with different teams. Maybe that player who's currently on a roster and believed to be on another roster as it stands right now when we're recording this on June the 10th, maybe that player will be out on the street and it's like, you know what, I need to sign a 1-year deal to prove my worth with a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you do have to at least feel like now that he's here, we're not as concerned about how quickly it would take for a receiver to get on board with him. We feel like him being here has to at least make him in the driver's seat. And now the guys that whoever we would sign, whether it's an Amari Cooper or Gabe Davis, whether it's somebody, like you said, currently on a roster right now, maybe it's a Deontay Johnson type, just throwing it out there. Those are the type of things that we would at least feel better about. But I would also say this, man, on the flip side of that, it's like, all right, if we know that, he's going to be able to bring these things to it, does that raise your win-loss total in terms of what we're thinking as a whole right now, right? We said NFC Championship. I know you loosely threw that out there, but in, terms of the regular season part of it, do you still see this as a 10 win, or do you think this now bumps them to 12, maybe 13 wins?
No, I would go about 10 wins.
Okay.
When I was doing the season predictions, it's just like I think Tomlin performs with what he's got. And so I've got 10 wins, maybe 11 wins. Here's the thing, Arthur, is like I've heard other people say this. On paper, I think that the Steelers are better offensively than they were a year ago. But the game's not played on paper. You have to see how everything comes together, the continuity, how players gel, how they perform with one another. On paper, I like on paper what they have right now more than what they had a year ago. But again, that's not necessarily how the game's played. That's why they play the games as well.
No, 100%, man. 100% on that. Now, as we look at Aaron Rodgers, though, what is he at this stage? I mean, we saw last year, and it's like the mixed bag, right? We talk about him early season, not the best. You talk about him late in the season, it was more optimism. But then you look at full body of work from last year, the statistics would have looked good for any of the Steelers quarterbacks over the past 5 years. But then you look at Aaron Rodgers from a historical standpoint, and we say, well, man, that was his worst year as well. So where do you fall with that, man, in terms of what you believe he's capable of from just an individual perspective?
I don't think he wants to go out like how he performed with the Jets. And there's some people saying that he ruined New York. Be real here. He didn't though. No, some people feel this way.
New York was already ruined. It was New York. What are we talking about?
Yeah, they haven't made the playoffs. What is it, 14 or 15 straight seasons?
Butt fumble ruined New York. The butt fumble ruined New York. Stop playing.
So I also think a lot of it hinges on the development of the Steelers' offensive line relative to the draft capital that they've spent. And so what I mean by that is Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, back-to-back first-round picks, Zach Frazier, a second-round pick, McCormick's a pick, and Sam Malu's your veteran starter. Rodgers didn't have the protection that he needed to be successful in New York. So if the Steelers' offensive line can develop, okay, I like the budding relationship he has with DK Metcalf. When they're at Cam Hayward's golf tournament, I want to know what type of, of course, what type of music are they listening to on the boombox when they're in the golf cart together? So I like to see that relationship form. Can that relationship form with other Steelers receivers, other offensive personnel to get this offense to where it needs to be? I keep going back to this in terms of establishing an offensive identity if you're Pittsburgh. You go back to 2018 when Pouncey was a second-team All-Pro. You've got to go the year before that, 2017, when you had first-team All-Pros in DeCastro, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown. I want to have a player be a first-team All-Pro on this offense. Dominance, in that is what has been lacking on that side of the football for Pittsburgh for years now.
Well, I mean, we got some guys that are going to be capable of it, but we also would say the guys that we would say are capable of all-pro status on offense are also playing in a conference where the best in the world also play those positions. When we're talking AFC wide receivers, AFC quarterbacks, that's my only concern with that. I mean, obviously we have a young offensive line, and I pray that they can develop sooner rather than later, because we would all agree. Rodgers with time, any of these quarterbacks with time
Mm.
can play and play at a high level. The problem is a lot of these quarterbacks at this level don't get a lot of time, and that's due to the trenches and why guys like TJ get paid crazy amounts of money to do what they do. But enough of this positive side of it, man, because we have been talking a good amount about what he brings and what we do ultimately like about him. Now, what are some of the things that make you a little bit more hesitant about this situation? Some of the cons you potentially see to this move right here.
This isn't so much about Rodgers as it is the Steelers organization as a whole. And this was going to be true even if Mason Rudolph was the guy. 5 starters in 5 years. Show me another organization where that's worked.
Yep.
Where it's still, the analogy I've made is trying to repair the engine plane while the plane's up in the air. And I think Aaron Rodgers is some pretty solid duct tape to make sure that the engine doesn't fall out of the plane. But this is a big question I had for you, Arthur, is this. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be on this roster next season in 2026? I understand it's a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
But if they have success, like if they win a playoff game for the first time since that 2016 season, January of 2017, would you then consider to say, let's bring Aaron Rodgers back when he's 42, going to turn 43 for the 2026 season?
So the way I look at it is this. I'm not afraid to bring him back. The age, to me, in the words of Aaliyah, is nothing but a number. Um, we all felt some type of way when Tom Brady signed with the Buccaneers, right? Oh, he's old. It's done. And then we saw that turned out that first year. Then we even saw him in that second season where he still played at a very high level. Even to the point where we were saying if he wanted to play again, he probably could. He just decided to ultimately step away. So if Aaron Rodgers is able to come here and he has that quote unquote revitalization, right? The Tom Brady to Tampa refreshing feeling, or even when you brought up Brett Favre going to Minnesota, he was up there for 2 years as well. First year, NFC Championship game, right? Next year, we obviously know he ended up not being able to finish the season. So with both of those scenarios, you saw that production. You saw guys be able to kind of, rewind the clock a little bit. And if Rodgers is able to do that, I'm all for him being here for 2 years. But I guess, thing that I would need to know is the way that he communicated with Minnesota about being open and willing to mentor a JJ McCarthy, being open and willing to have that type of dynamic, that type of relationship. That would need to be the same thing that would be communicated prior to us bringing him back. Because regardless of how well he plays this year, he's not the long-term answer. He's not going to be the Steelers quarterback in 5 years. Definitely not in 10 years. So to me, I look at the classes coming out next year from a quarterback perspective. We look at the draft capital that the Steelers have, and we obviously know where the draft will be, located right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I just feel like everything is pointing to them taking their quarterback in the first round next year, regardless of how Rodgers feels about it. So I think if Rodgers is open to him coming, then I think that he would be open to that mentorship, and that's the way that we would bring him back. But before we even get to that, he has to play well.
Yeah.
It can't be, this super bad season or, a high, heavy turnover laden season, or even a season where he's missing a ton of time due to injuries. I think any of those things will ultimately scare the organization away from a long-term commit or even committing with him for another year.
Well said. And that's the 12 draft picks that you're talking about for next year's draft that the Steelers have, to where even if they have late teens, early 20s,
We
they
don't have
can
to tank
trade
to
up.
go get one. Yep.
Correct. There's that. There's also the McAfee piece. Mike Tomlin's done a masterful job of keeping things in-house. And we've talked about it earlier this offseason with the George Pickens trade to Dallas, when the Steelers know when to get rid of a player, and that player's production isn't quite the same when they were in the black and gold, when they were playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What happens if you run into a bit of turmoil and Rodgers says something on the McAfee show with that platform that he has going on with his weekly appearances, and how the Steelers handle that as an organization? That's something I'm looking at. It's something where Rodgers, there's times, for as prolific of a quarterback as he can be in this league, as a multi-time MVP, win a Super Bowl champion and all of that, the leadership component and what it takes to be a quarterback in the NFL, face of the franchise, the CEO, I mean, I looked last year before the Steelers traded for Mike Williams, what he said of, oh, my guy ran the wrong route and how that blew up. Rodgers has to know that
Red
that's going to happen.
line,
Yeah.
get the red
Yeah.
line.
So that's kind of the glass half full perspective of, okay, if you're against this deal, I'm with you though too. Rodgers cannot derail what your plan is long term for the quarterback position, because that's something that the Steelers need to get right long term, and it's something that they've struggled with since Ben Roethlisberger retired.
No, without a doubt. Now, I do have hope. I'm optimistic about the leadership element, and zero to do with Aaron Rodgers, 100% because of Mike Tomlin. I will say that outside of Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers hasn't had that type of stability at the position. Obviously, we know LaFleur came in, but he was still on the younger side. We obviously know when you talk about the Jets, Saleh, that was his first time being the head guy. Coach Tomlin is a leader of men. He's been that for decades. And that is something that just I say. I mean, you talk to anybody that's played for him or worked with him, they all resonate that same message. So to me, I just think that for Aaron Rodgers, that is going to be a refreshing feeling, having a true leader, a guy that actually understands how to communicate, isn't afraid to communicate to Aaron Rodgers, because he can look at Aaron Rodgers right in his eyes and say, man, I'm just as big as you. I'm just as accomplished as you. And I think that that's going to be something that's very different for Rodgers. And I think in a good way, though, because sometimes it takes you meeting up with somebody that you respect on a higher level to get you to kind of humble it a little bit and really buy into the we perspective versus the me perspective that at times it could have been viewed as in New York.
You're not the only former Steeler I've heard say that, Arthur, in terms of players who have played for Mike Tomlin, the we versus me mentality. I have heard that from Ike Taylor. I've heard that from a number of some of your teammates, some of his
That was my guy.
teammates.
Come on, man.
In
It's
terms
clear.
in terms of what it's like to play for Mike Tomlin. We
Yeah.
were talking winners and losers. Some of the people who don't stand to benefit from this Rodgers acquisition. I was starting to come around to the idea of Mason Rudolph being the team's starting quarterback. Now
I was too. I was open to it.
I wanted just to see what he could do with the opportunity. Certainly, I think that the ceiling was lower with Rudolph than it would be Rodgers. Who knows? Perhaps at some point in time, the Steelers will need to rely on Rudolph at some point in the 2025 season. We'll see how that shakes out. But Skylar Thompson as well, because he's got to be thinking like, I've started a playoff game in my career, and now I'm going to be QB4. Everyone's psyched. I mean, if you look on Twitter, Arthur, Will Howard's already the next coming of Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, come on, man.
I've seen that. Oh my! And look, and then when you tell people to pump your brakes, they say, "Oh man, you hating, man? Come on, man. Why you hating on him, man? The kid's nice." It's like, all right. I'm sorry. But yes, he's already been Roethlisberger. It's already signed, so delivered. It's done. But Skylar Thompson, man, it does suck for him. But the other part that I will say is a benefit to him is how we have those new quarterback rules and the practice squad rules. A guy like Skylar Thompson, it does still open up doors for him. Now, unfortunately, the other part of Skylar Thompson losing is with the preseason condensed format, what game do you even get to play it? And I think that that's the part that really sucks, because you know guys like Mason Rudolph, they're going to play a lot. Guys like Will Howard, they're going to play a lot in the preseason. I just don't know how much time Skylar Thompson even gets to put out his best foot, if that makes sense.
If I'm Pittsburgh, though, I hang on to Skylar Thompson through the preseason. Let's get to week one with everybody healthy. I always say that the preseason, and I steal this from my guy Dave Damashek, it's like a war reenactment. It looks like the real thing, it feels like the real thing, it ain't the real thing. And the reason I say this is hang on to Skylar Thompson through the preseason. What happened in that 2019 season when it was, oh no, we can get rid of Josh Dobbs, no problem. And then Ben goes down, and then you're stuck with Mason Rudolph, and then Duck Hodges were your two quarterbacks that season. And that offense, that was a rough season. And somehow the Steelers still got to 8-8. Yeah, still got to 8-8.
Find a way.
But I'm not in a rush to get rid of Skylar Thompson just because injuries do happen. Getting through the preseason healthy. And the reason I really bring this up is, okay, Aaron Rodgers at his advanced age, Mason Rudolph is also a pocket passing quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those players is like the epitome of mobility at this point in their respective careers. They're both pocket passers. So let's try to get to week one healthy is my point, and keep the depth that you have at the most important position that there is in sports.
Absolutely. I like that. And yes, please stay healthy. We yeah, that remember the Jets year one with Rodgers, man. I could only imagine that feeling. The
Oh,
super high, the expectations. I mean, they had hard knocks, all type of just craziness going on. And literally 4 plays in, you're done. Oh my God, yeah. I'll be sick. So yeah, we don't need any of that. Keep him as preserved as possible going into this thing, man. Oh, goodness.
yeah,
All
no,
right.
he's
Oh,
holding out the flag. He's holding out the
I
flag.
know
Monday
it was the
Night
flag. Come
Football.
on, man.
New
I'm like,
York
no,
football's back.
no, please.
Oh.
Like, listen, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to even risk it. Don't have him hold the flag coming out, all right? Anything that happened on that night, we're just gonna never do that, replicate that at all
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh, all right? But final thing that I have for you, man, as it pertains to, Aaron Rodgers and obviously, him signing here and stuff like that is as we, talk about I answered it already, right? Aaron Rodgers, man, depending on how he plays this year, I was open to him coming back next year. For you, man, would you have a similar mindset to that in terms of being open to him still returning if, he plays extremely well, or would it still just for you exclusively be 1 year and we have to move on to give, whoever this new quarterback next year will be a legitimate opportunity?
Let me make the case for moving on, because I think your mindset of if he's open to mentoring, fine,
Mm-hmm.
cool. When has he done that to this point in his
Yep.
career? And I understand you're younger at previous
Mm-hmm.
stops, but when the Packers drafted Jordan Love and we could have drafted another player that put us over the top. How many opportunities he's gotten to do that, and how many times he's failed in the NFC Championship game when he was still a member of the Packers.
Yeah,
I
multiple,
understand
right?
he has one, but it's like he had so many other opportunities, and if he felt he was one player away, I'm just not buying that. So to this point in Rodgers' career, the case against it to say, hey, one and done with Pittsburgh would be he hasn't demonstrated that at previous stops in his career and previous points in his career. Granted, he was a younger player. He was a younger man when he was making that case, and he's also playing at an MVP level. So different points in the career, but he hasn't demonstrated that to this point. So I do think it'll be 1 year. I think we're going to be doing the same thing again next offseason. But here's the issue that I've got, because if you're saying that the Steelers are playing roulette at quarterback with 5 starters in 5 years in Ben and then Trubisky, Pickett, Fields and Wilson, and now Rodgers. Roulette implies that you can actually win something, and I'm sorry, even with Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers aren't winning the Super Bowl this year.
Hey,
It's
well,
just the
that's
truth. It's just
this
the
the
truth.
beauty is it. The beauty is this. Everybody can say we're not going to win it because the odds are always in favor of that. But the beautiful part is we're gonna find out, man. That's why you got to play those games, man. But Aaron Rodgers has already proven it at least at one point, so that to me gives them at least that hope. Because I mean, how many people, players specifically in this league, have never even played in the game? So that's the part where I at least feel some type of optimism. But we're going to see, man. We are going to see. Arthur Smith should be happy though. I will say that we should have. Why didn't we include him as a winner? Huh? Where was the Arthur Smith when we were talking about the winners today? Arthur Smith has to be excited that he's going to be playing with the Aaron Rodgers out there, right? Versus a Mason or Will Howard or Skylar Thompson. Wouldn't you agree?
One thing that will be a thing of beauty is something, if you've watched Aaron Rodgers at all in his career, is he's tremendous with his ball fakes and what that does in terms of
Mm-hmm.
moving defenders' eyes and manipulating a defense. Arthur Smith's offense
Come on
predicated a
now.
lot on the play action pass. That should be something where if you give Rodgers time, that should be really, really fun to watch. Where if you give him time, the play action and the ball faking, that has to excite Arthur Smith a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And can he teach just some of the nuances of the game to the other quarterbacks on the Steelers roster? That's something where that's not going to show up in a stat sheet, but that's where if you have 2 eyeballs, heck, if you've got
Uh-huh.
1 eyeball, you'll see when you watch Aaron Rodgers on Sundays.
No, absolutely, man. Mark, Always a blast, man, whenever we get to do this. And like I said, man, we're going to be doing this a lot more going forward, man. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers is officially a part of the black and the gold. So with that being the case, man, Mark, I appreciate you again, man, taking some time to jump on the show. And yes, to everybody that's out there watching this, if you enjoyed it, man, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as well. And we appreciate you for tuning in. And until next time, baby, peace.